So we have some information when it comes to former TNA World Heavyweight Champion Moose and his status with Impact Wrestling. Specifically, what is going on with Moose's contract in Impact Wrestling. We now know officially, this had been rumoured for a while. This had been spoken about on social media and had been reported widely. We'd spoken about it briefly on the channel a couple of times here, but we now know officially that Moose's contract does expire with Impact Wrestling next month because Moose has confirmed this himself. Moose has revealed on social media that his contract with Impact Wrestling will expire next month in June. Now, the 37-year-old pro wrestler who debuted in Impact in July of 2016 wrote on Twitter that he'd set himself the target of winning the Impact World Championship before his deal with Impact runs out next month. This is what he had to say, quote, "My goal is to win the Impact World Championship before my contract is up in June." Now, Moose will get the opportunity to earn a match against Kenny Omega for the Impact World Championship at Under Siege next Saturday when he competes in a six-man match to determine the number one contender to the Impact World Championship. Now, Fightful, they had previously reported back in February that Moose's Impact contract would indeed expire in June of 2021. This was after Don Callis repeatedly mentioned on commentary that he had 2 years left on his deal, and he mentioned in a backstage segment at Hard to Kill in January that Moose had a couple of years left on his contract, but that is not the case. Now, those remarks were strictly made for storyline purposes. However, the former TNA World Heavyweight Champion himself has now confirmed that his contract does indeed expire next month. This is an interesting one. When it comes to Moose and his situation, his contract, is he going to stay with Impact Wrestling? What's going on in that vein? You know, my opinion really hasn't changed too much on it. Now, I know that Impact, obviously, this past week had some fantastic news when it came to their contract situation, that they re-signed Jordynne Grace to a contract. I didn't think they were going to be able to re-sign Jordynne Grace to a contract. I felt that given the talent that she is and the unique look that she has and the growing following on social media that she has and how integral she's been in the women's knockouts division in Impact Wrestling, being a former knockouts champion, being one half of the current knockouts tag team champions, I kept thinking that she would go to a WWE or an AEW, or at least one of the promotions would make an offer to her just because of her talent and because she really would have been one of the more hot free agents on the market had her Impact Wrestling contract expired. But Impact Wrestling managed to convince Jordynne Grace to stay. She re-signed a multiple-year deal with Impact this past week. Does that necessarily change my opinion on Moose, on will he or won't he re-sign with Impact Wrestling? Not really. Not really. For a while there, whilst he was the TNA World Heavyweight Champion and all that kind of stuff, I felt that Moose, it was 50-50. I felt there was a possibility that he could re-sign. As we get closer to his contract expiring, and if you've watched Moose over the course of the last 12 months, I think Impact are going to have a real job on their hands to convince him to stay. And that's not because Impact Wrestling aren't doing great things. That's not because Impact Wrestling isn't a great company or financially they can't offer Moose a good contract. They can do all of that. And they are doing great stuff at the moment. And they are a company that is improving. And they've got working relationships with New Japan, with AEW, with AAA. They are doing good work at the moment. And they've certainly have helped benefit Moose in his career, and they've helped improve his work on the microphone, in the ring, in terms of his presentation, all that kind of stuff. I just think, given Moose's age, I mentioned he's 37 years of age. He's been with the company since 2016, so he's been with Impact Wrestling a long time, longer in more recent history than a lot of wrestlers would be. Usually a star signs of Impact, they're around for maybe 2-3 years, and then they go to a WWE and AEW, something like that. Moose has been around for 5 years at this point. I just think, given his age, given the fact that he's in his, what we would class as his wrestling peak now, once you get to sort of your mid to late 30s, that's in your wrestling peak. Given that, I'm not going to say what's left for him to do in Impact, because there is quite a few things for him to do. He mentioned he hasn't been an Impact World Champion. I don't know if he's been an Impact Tag Team Champion as well. There's other stuff for him to do, and he absolutely can be the focal point of Impact Wrestling going forward. He can be the leader of that company going forward. He is the person that if Impact really wants to, they can build the company around. So I'm not going to be one of those people that says, oh, he's got nothing left to achieve. He still does have stuff left to achieve in Impact. There's no doubt about that. I just think, given, again, his radical improvement over the course of the last 12 months, and that includes on the microphone, which I still do think that's probably the area that I'd say he probably does need to improve on still the most, but he's a decent promo. Given his in-ring work has improved, I think, exponentially. I mean, when Moose replaced Alex Shelley for that hard-to-kill main event in January, where it was going to be the Motor City Machine Guns and Rich Swann versus Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers, obviously Alex Shelley couldn't participate in that match because of his day job, working as a frontline care worker. There were he's a chiropractor or something like that, isn't he? And part of the company that he works for, they changed their policy when it came to travel and COVID and all that kind of stuff. And because of that, Alex Shelley wasn't able to participate in the main event of Hard to Kill. Moose replaced him. And I, at the time, I'm not afraid to admit it, I, at the time, was like, I think it makes it a worse match. I think it makes it a worse match because Alex Shelley's Alex Shelley, in terms of being an in-ring competitor, just a general high quality in there with the Motor City Machine Guns, the chemistry that they would have had, all that kind of stuff. I went, well, Alex Shelley being replaced for Moose, it does worsen the match. And again, that's no slight against Moose. That's just how I felt at the time. But to be honest, watching that match back and watching that match in real time when it happened, Moose was the standout star in that match. And that's a match that involved Kenny Omega and Rich Swann and everyone else that was involved in it. Moose was the standout guy. He was the guy that coming out of that match, everyone said, I tell you what, Moose delivered. You know, he's hitting Spanish flies off the top rope. He's hitting all this kind of crazy offense, and he just felt like a big level star. He felt like a main event level competitor, and he felt like someone that you would just look at and you say, man, this guy he's top quality. He really is top quality. And that really did change my perspective on Moose, and it was changing over time. But that match really, for me, turned heads, and I looked at him in a completely different light and said, man, that is a guy that can be a world champion in Impact Wrestling, or that is someone that he's obviously blooming later on in his career, probably because he came over from the NFL and he didn't have that firm base of a pro wrestling sort of knowledge coming into it. And look, he's absolutely blown me away, especially in the course of the last 6 months. And on top of that, you look at physically how he's transformed over the course of the last 5 years since he debuted in Impact, but certainly in the past 12 months. The guy is in absolutely the shape of his life. The presentation that Impact now has of him, I think, is fantastic. I really do think it is fantastic. The entrance he has in Impact Wrestling, for me, is one of the best entrances in Impact Wrestling right now. The lights go out, the music play, the spotlight comes on, he comes out, he looks like just not even $1 million, $1 billion. He really does look fantastic physically. He carries himself like a star. He looks like a star. He looks like a main eventer. He looks like a badass, and he backs it up now. He's really got everything. He really does have everything. So because of that, and this is where I'm going towards here. Because of that, that would be my thought process of I can see a WWE being interested. That's my feeling now. I can see a WWE looking at Moose and saying, okay, that's the kind of person we want. We want someone that is a former NFL player. He's got pedigree. He's got a background. He's got a story. Physically, he looks fantastic. He can go in the ring. He can cut a promo. He's legitimate. He ticks every single box that WWE looks for when they recruit talent at this point. And he's ready to go today. And I look at that and I say, there is just no way for me that when Moose's contract expires next month, or even now, because we've heard the reports and rumors that WWE have begun reaching out to people in Impact asking, when's your contract up? Do you want to negotiate? Do you want to talk? Let us know when your contract comes up. We'll discuss things. To me, there is just no way. There is just no way that WWE hasn't already reached out to Moose, or certainly is planning on doing it in the future, because he's just too good of a talent at this point, and he's ticking every single box that they look for. That's why I think Impact Wrestling will have a job on their hands to re-sign him. Now, I think it's not impossible for Impact to re-sign Moose. I must stress that. I don't think it's impossible. And I do think there is ways that they can convince Moose to stay. I think the way to convince him isn't necessarily going to be a financial point of view, because WWE are going to blow Impact out of the water with their financial deals. Unless Impact really does break the bank, which they could do. I don't think they would, though. I don't think it'll be about finances if Moose stays. I think it'll be about opportunity. I think Moose would want guarantees, or nothing's guaranteed in the world of pro wrestling, but I think he would want some kind of understanding of, Kenny Omega's going to drop the Impact World Championship at some point. He isn't going to stay the Impact World Champion forever. For me, it's either Slammiversary or Bound for Glory. Personally, I can see it being Bound for Glory. I think Slammiversary might be too soon for Kenny Omega to drop the Impact World Championship. I've said it before. I think that when he drops the Impact World Championship, he won't be the AEW World Champion at that period of time. I think he has to drop the AEW title first. It just depends when that happens. It looks like he's going to be facing Orange Cassidy at Double or Nothing. I don't see him dropping it in May. That leads me to say possibly he'll drop it in October. Or he'll drop the AEW World Championship in August or September, All Out, which then opens up the possibility for him to drop the Impact World Championship at Bound for Glory in October. I think the way to get Moose to re-sign with Impact is to have this discussion of, if you re-sign, you're going to be facing Kenny Omega in October, and obviously Kenny's dropping the title then. It's already been agreed. We want you to be the guy that's the Impact World Champion. We want you to be the guy that we build the company around. You're in your prime. You're ready. Physically, you've never looked better in the ring. You've never been better on the mic. You've never been better, and we want you to carry the company into the future. I think that's the only way they get Moose to re-sign. But he's saying he wants to achieve that goal before his contract expires in June, and I don't know how that would work. Slammiversary is in July. So how is he going to win the Impact World Championship between now and June? It would have to be against all odds. So we could be looking at a scenario where maybe against all odds is Moose's final match inside of an Impact Wrestling ring. It's definitely a developing story. And I think it is something that is going to definitely explode over the next couple of weeks as we get closer to this expiry date. Again, my gut right now, if you ask me to put a judgment on what do I think is going to happen when it comes to Moose, who do I think he's going to re-sign with Impact Wrestling or not, my gut right now and my judgment call right now would be that I don't see it. I see him going to WWE. The reason I see him going to WWE plainly is just because he ticks every single box of what they look for, and I think that's the most likely outcome. I could be wrong. I've been wrong before, so we'll have to wait and see on that. Before we wrap things up, I do want to talk about the ratings for this past week of Impact Wrestling on AXS TV as well, because it's an interesting story, this week when it comes to the ratings for Impact this week. Because Thursday's new edition of Impact Wrestling on AXS TV, of course, featuring a Moose vs. James Storm main event, drew 123,000 viewers on AXS TV. This is according to ShowBuzz Daily. Now, the show drew a 0.04 rating in the key 18 to 49 demographic. This week's Impact ranked 125th in the cable top 150 for the key demographic and ranked 137th for the night on cable in terms of cable viewership. Now, these numbers in terms of the viewing figures are up from last week's post-rebellion episode, which drew 120,000 viewers with a 0.05 rating in the key demographic. Last week's show ranked 112th in the cable top 150 for the key demo and ranked 130th for the night on cable in terms of viewership. This week's Impact viewership was up 2.5% from last week, while the key 18 to 49 demographic was down 20% from last week. Now, this week's Impact Wrestling viewership was down 12.14% from the same week in 2020 as well, which is interesting considering, I would argue, I'm not even necessarily arguing, I think it's just facts. I think the Impact product, if you're going to compare it to this time last year, I think the product is better. I think it's miles better. So it's slightly disconcerting that it would be down, that amount from year on year. I think that's just that's television degrading. That's television degrading. It's really difficult, week, year to date or whatever, to be up from what it was last year unless you're doing a special show. It's just really hard. Again, that's because of television going down. And obviously the pandemic does play a factor in that, and hopefully once Impact starts touring and starts getting back on the road and all that kind of stuff, things might change for that. But it's interesting. I think it's fascinating that the viewership is up but the key demographic is down, so that would imply that the viewers tuning in are older viewers, which is certainly curious. I don't know. The thing is with ratings, and you know how I feel about them because we've spoken about them extensively here on the channel. There's lots of different ways to look into it. You can look into statistics in general, however many ways that statistics in general are there to be manipulated. You can twist numbers to fit any kind of narrative that you want. Do ratings still have a place in wrestling in 2021? Of course they do. They always will, and the reason they always will is because the television networks and the advertisers care about them. I think Impact Wrestling viewership rising is a positive for AXS TV and for Impact Wrestling. They might be slightly concerned about the key demographic dropping. in terms of the percentage points, it sounds worse, saying, oh, they dropped 20% in terms of the key demographic. In reality, they went from a 0.05 to a 0.04. They've just gone down 0.01. So it's just when you're dealing with numbers that small, any drop is significant, and that's the issue. I think in the grand scheme of things, look, otherwise they would be on Tuesday night still. They'd be competing with NXT, and the ratings would be far, far worse. So I don't think in the grand schemes they'll be massively concerned about the numbers this week. As we get closer to Slammiversary, they're going to rock it, I think, in terms of impact. I don't think they're going to be getting, 400,000 or 500,000 or anything like that, but they're going to rise as we head into Slammiversary in July. There's no doubt about it, considering the possibility of the ex-WWE stars and the former Impact stars coming in. It's certainly an exciting time to be a fan of Impact and an exciting time to be a fan of pro wrestling. So very exciting indeed. But of course, guys, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on Moose announcing and confirming that his Impact Wrestling contract expires next month, and the Impact Wrestling viewership rising on AXS TV, but dropping in the key demographic? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about Impact Wrestling, WWE, AEW, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community, drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.